News time, 6:54. Now on Colorado's Morning News, a new artificial intelligence tool called ChatGPT now creating new conversations from everything from how homework is done to how chats are being done with this new app. And we're hearing a lot about what it comes to artificial intelligence. UNC professor, he also has a book entitled Gaming SEL, Games as Transformational to Social and Emotional Learning, author of several books. He's joining us now on the Centura Health Hotline, Professor Matthew Farber. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. First, for people that don't know what this is, can you first just kind of explain this new ChatGPT?
Sure, I'll do my best, and good morning, everybody. ChatGPT is a combination, I would say, of a LLM, which is this large language model, and it's a bit of a AI as well, combined together. In simplest terms, if you think about autocomplete or autocorrect, how it predicts the next word you're going to say, it uses a statistical model to go way further than that.
So, Professor, what's kind of the main reasons behind this? I know there's a lot of stir about how it's kind of being used for homework, whether for good or for bad. These kind of odd chats that people are starting to do with the AI system. What is the overall reasoning for this?
For people trying to break those systems like that?
I guess kind of for the use of it, too.
Yeah. Some people have been saying that ChatGPT and these sorts of AI systems are like when math had its calculator moment, right? But we could also think back to Grammarly, spell check, Google search, Wikipedia, even like World Book encyclopedias. And so that's what gets some people hesitant about whether they'll be used for good or for not good. As far as some AI giving some kind of like creepy responses to people, I think it's sort of like this weird us versus them approach. So I study games, and games are engage people in systems. They know these are interconnected systems that are designed, and they're playful. So people come at it and play with it like almost like a toy or a game. That's how I use ChatGPT. I see what it can do. Maybe I can make it do weird things, break the system. Or maybe it could be really helpful, like a tool. But on the other end, AI is what's called scraping the internet. And it's scraping the internet and giving us back what we are entering into the internet, basically. You could think of it like the TV show Black Mirror on Netflix, the techno thriller, right? Sort of like a Twilight Zone with technology. And a Black Mirror is a reference to your smartphone screen. It's a black screen when it's off. And it's reflecting back at you, sometimes the best and sometimes the worst, right? So if there's a lot of if there are a lot of people entering in, like, rogue AI stories or like moody blog posts and those sorts of things, that's what it's going to spit back at you if you ask it for those sorts of weird questions.
Professor, is this a replacement of such? Is it a tool? Because I guess I could see, when we could talk about the more nefarious things that could be done. You addressed a little bit of that, but is this more of a potential replacement tool for if you want to say teachers, professors like yourself, where there's a lack of maybe the actual in-person or a human element to this thing?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. I think it's like most new technologies. Once the dust settles and the hype goes away, it's going to be just another useful tool. Again, like the calculator was, that didn't replace math class. In fact, many folks have observed how math class has actually gotten more complex and difficult because the so-called easier or mundane tasks were automated by calculators. I never learned how to do a square root equation. I just did it on a calculator when I went to school. I don't know what goes underneath that, right? But then the math in class got way more complex. So some of the basic writing, like compare and contrast, or some lower level writing tasks can be then outsourced to AI. It's also really interesting to help writing. For instance, you could have it change its tone. You could write a story in the voice of Dr. Seuss, let's say. And that could really help students have a nice model to then be creative when they're writing.
So, Professor, it kind of sounds like you're a little bit in favor of this, correct?
I am in favor of it, yeah. I think it's really interesting, and I find it quite helpful, actually. I've used it myself for, giving me examples of, well, here's an example. When you have writer's block, right? When you're writing, there's nothing worse than that blank white page. So at the very minimum, it'll give you a starting point. And I think that's exciting. I also find it exciting if you're an English language learner. You could have a really interesting model of what an essay is, but maybe what outline is, or maybe a story told in a third-person voice or first-person voice, and keep switching it around. So there are a lot of educational potentials here, and I try to look at the positives, but there are always, the negatives. There are always the nefarious versions of any technology, right?
He is a professor at UNC, Matthew Farber. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
I know a teacher who uses it as well. And what they do is they purposely have this app, this AI system, write papers, give them to their students and say, what would you change in this paper? Instead of having them pretty much copy what an AI can do. It's kind of using it for the reverse aspects of it. So it's interesting.
Well, I understand for some calculations, since he used the analogy of the calculator, which is great, and God knows I'm out of my depth with math, but at some time you'd have to, I think, be able to show your work, as my son does with math. Well, fine, you can use this, but show how you got that. I wonder if we lose that computation when it comes to writing, the emotion, the take with that when it's presented to you, versus you having to think about how you compare and contrast versus this using that analytical side. But, again, you're not going to be able to shove that technology back into a jar.
Right. News coming up next. We'll go to Dave Hunter now, checking your